When the bolt goes back, that lever spring loads up. You can see it's got a torsion spring here. It's in the bolt, but when we shove a shell up underneath it, you can see that it's not coming into contact. The right extractor doesn't push the cartridge rim or the body against the left extractor at all. All right, so move the hook a little further forward, polish it up a little bit. Now I want to make sure that the hook moves in towards the case when the case is on the breech face. And to do that, I need to relieve this flat surface. But remember how I mentioned I got to round it, so polish that a little bit. Shell goes onto the breech face with tension. We don't fall off. So extractors are now correct.
Hi, and welcome to Over the Gunsmith's Shoulder. I'm Gene Kelly, president of the American Gunsmithing Institute, and in this segment, Master Gunsmith Ken Brooks is going to walk you step by step through a gunsmithing repair. You're going to learn a lot. And if you'd like to learn to be a certified professional gunsmith, then go to AmericanGunsmithingInstitute.com and request an information package. Now let's learn from Ken.
Well, we're back in my shop, ready to do another one. So we're going to talk a little bit about this one before we dive into it, which I know you guys really want to see the mechanics of it. General repair, that's what I do. A little bit of everything. I never know what's coming through the door. With that being said, as a general rule, I don't get to work on cool, fun stuff. Well, why? Well, cool, fun stuff doesn't break, right? Your really good guns, man, they're running. They don't break, or they rarely break. So when you do get to work on them, usually it's sights, minor trigger, parts replacement, things like that, or somebody else was fixing it and now you've got to fix their repair, right? So I want to preface this, the gun we're going to work on and whatnot, it's neat mechanically. I get that, and I think it's neat, but I hate working on them. The way they work, half the mechanism is really cool, and part of the mechanism is terrible, terrible, terrible. So I don't enjoy working on these as a general rule when it's this defect. So what am I talking about? What's he talking about? Savage 87 Series 22 rifles. This one is an earlier one, I believe. This one might even be a offshoot. This is a Ranger, so it's, made by Savage. The Model 6, 87, etc., etc., etc. I like the trigger mechanism, the way they work. We're empty, so you pull the trigger, bang, and as you're holding the trigger, when the bolt cycles back, it's caught and held rearward until you release the trigger. Then you release the trigger, bolt goes forward, feeds the next round, you re-pull, bang, and it just repeats. So that mechanism part of it is great and fun. What sucks is the feeding on these. There are different versions, different manufacturing techniques in the later ones. Some of the early stuff was good, and some of the later stuff is good. Some of the early stuff is bad, some of the later stuff is bad. So this particular one is here for a feeding issue. So we're probably not going to need to dive into the trigger mechanism and how it works, but we're going to have to fool with the feeding. So I'm going to tear it apart because I have no idea why this one doesn't feed. I got a sneaky suspicion. So there's, in the feed guide, the magazine tube comes back into a housing that bolts onto the bottom of the receiver, and there is a little spring clip guy that is your cartridge stop affair. And they get tweaked. People, when they're cleaning their guns, people catch them with rags and either tweak them and bend them or pull them off and they get lost. Either way is bad, obviously. When they get tweaked, they're a nightmare to get bent back into the correct shape. Luckily, there are some new ones still available. The last time I checked, now this has been a while, but you can still get those cartridge guide springs. And there's 2 or 3 different styles. I know there's a large and a small, and there may even be a different one. So I'm going to pull this apart real quick and check. Feeding, before I go any further, polish the chamber, fit the extractors. We know that. That's something we do right off the bat. So I'll be doing that regardless of what else we find in here. So All right, pulling the stock off. Here's that feed mechanism I was talking about that's bolted to the bottom of the receiver. The magazine tube comes back here. The shells come back into here. Here's your carrier. When the bolt goes back, that lever spring loads up. You can see it's got a torsion spring here. When the bolt goes back, that moves up and feeds that shell. Let me get a pointer, which I don't have right now. This groove right here and this groove right here are supposed to have a spring affair that fits around that and fits through these grooves on both sides and tensions and keeps the shell down in place until it's forced up past that. So this one's missing that spring that I was telling you about. I will have to double check to see if I have some in stock, but before we get that far, I'm going to go ahead and pull the bolt assembly out, and we're going to look at the extractors and the chamber, which I'm probably going to fool with anyhow. You can simply unscrew the plug at the rear. I usually, not always, release the tension. So plug comes out, bolt comes back. Here's the hammer and the firing pin. They also retain the cocking piece, or charging handle, cocking handle. And at this point, what am I looking for? Something long and skinny that I can push the breech bolt back and out. Take a 22 shell, and our right extractor looks good. Unfortunately, our left extractor doesn't look good at all. Matter of fact, it's gone. So we're missing a whole bunch of parts. So the first thing we're going to have to do is I'm actually going to stop here in a minute, and I'll go see if I have a left-hand extractor that fits on here, and a plunger, and a spring, and that cartridge guide or cartridge stop spring that fits around that. There are at least 3 different versions of extractors that I'm aware of, and probably more. There were thicker ones. This is an earlier style, which is, in my opinion, I like. Got a good right extractor. The left extractor, you've had extractors through us. Come take my hands-on class. We'll learn a lot about extractors, and it's a lot of fun. So the left-hand extractor, again, is going to be this width and fit in there. The other style is much thinner. And then the latest version was a stamped sheet metal version that wrapped around the top of the bolt, and then both extractors fit in here, sort of like a Marlin 336. All right, I am going to break and go see if I have these parts in inventory, and we will come back. One other thing I'm going to mention is even after we get through doing the work, you're probably not going to get to see me test fire this to make sure it works. This is also going to be one of those trial and error. I'm going to make the parts fit and do what they're supposed to at the bench. Then I will have to take the gun to the range and test fire. If it malfunctions, then I'll come back, do some adjustments, go back to the range. It's going to be a back and forth, back and forth, back and forth thing. So it's actually probably a multiple week, because I only go to the range once a week, multiple week repair. If everything is right the first time as we go, then it works great, all well and good, and it gets shipped back to the customer. But the reason it's multiple is that this cartridge guide right here is incredibly difficult to get it to fit on there, stay in place, and be tensioned correctly. It's got to do all that. All right, let me go look for parts. All right, so we got lucky. This is that spring, cartridge stop spring, cartridge guide spring. Here's our extractor plunger spring, and our left extractor. So I have all the parts, but of course now most of these, the plunger and the spring, I think are probably going to go in. We're not going to have to do a whole lot with those. The extractor is going to need to be fitted, and then this cartridge spring assembly is going to need to go into the gun. So what I'm going to do first is I think I'm going to try and get this spring on here. So it is going to fit like so. Let me take my glasses off so I can see up close, so I can talk to you guys. The hoop or the loop, the top, however you want to say it, goes over the top. You can actually even see a little bit of a rub mark right there. Then comes down, back, and these 2 legs right here and right here fit through the grooves in each side. So we're going to spread this apart. see about getting it to fit down. And of course not. Maybe I'm not holding my tongue just right. So a lot of times what will happen is one leg will get into position and the other one will not. And then it's kind of stuck on the whole affair. And I know my finger's in the way, I apologize. I'm not Bob, I try to keep my fingers out of the way, but sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. All right, so here's the hoop over the top, comes down, back, first leg goes inside here. Turning it over, you can actually see the leg sticking on the inside on that other side. What is the left side of the gun? Come around, I think you can see it sticking out in here. And then just to clarify, come down in here. Now this is, again, I told you there were two styles, and there may be more. I know there's two styles, the large and the small. And the large and the small has basically to do with this hoop here, and this particular one is the small one. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to fit all the other parts, and then I'll have to take it and test fire it. So that actually went together so much easier than I expected. And I'll probably try to run some shells through this at the bench before I go test fire. But I'm going to get everything else kind of squared away first and see where we're at and see how things happen. So that's in place. So that's the first thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is take our extractor and simply slide it down into the groove until the leg fits down in its hole. Push it down in there. And then I hold my thumb over it just to hold it in place so I can wrap it around, and or my index finger when I wrap it around this way so I can look at it. So it's in the bolt, but when we shove a shell up underneath it, you can see that it's not coming into contact. The right extractor doesn't push the cartridge rim or the body against the left extractor at all. And I can push that over. And when I do that, the ass end, or the back end here, wants to cam out. Now it's going to be held in place by that notch on the extractor. So it's not going to be shifting out like so. It's going to want to pivot. So I know that I'm going to have to do some work to make the hook, the negative hook, fit in towards the breech face more. So we're off to my vise. All right, in this view you can see the extractor's clamped in my vise, and I actually need to move this hook just a little bit forward, and I need to round over this area and this area of the extractor. Now, why round them over? Because we're rounded in the bottom here. There's not a square stop. So if I round these, that extractor will move further into the bolt, closer to the right extractor. So first thing I'm going to do is, I'm probably going to be in the way, just be aware, because I got to get over here where I can see. And what I'll do is I'll do a couple file swipes and let you guys take another look at it. You can see where I've been filing. It's a nice blued extractor. And you can see it's nice and shiny. I've been filed, and I'm simply moving that hook further forward just so there's more room for the rim to get underneath. Now I am going to round that over just a hair on the tip. I'm also going to take some, and I'm just guessing that I'm close enough. I'm actually going to have to put it in the bolt to make sure. All right, so move the hook a little further forward, polish it up a little bit. Now I want to make sure that the hook moves in towards the case when the case is on the breech face. And to do that, I need to relieve this flat surface. But remember how I mentioned I got to round it, so. Now I can take some emery cloth I'm just rounding over those edges. Now you can see how that's rounded over. And without moving the camera too much, we're going to see if we can do everything right here. Drop our extractor spring down in there. Take our plunger, put it down in, and then I always look down here because it's got a flat. That flat needs to be towards the extractor. There we go. Because that flat fits over the back of the extractor, retains the extractor. Now I'm going to use the extractor itself to compress the extractor plunger, pushing it down in so it snaps into place. Now you can see how the plunger is here over the top of the extractor. Spring loads the extractor. So the basic mechanics are working for us a little bit right now. Extractor hook is up here using our shell. It fits underneath. We're quite a ways from that extractor, so the extractor needs to move over. Now I just pushed it over. It's not far enough, but what that tells me is that it's spring loaded over so far, and then you push this and it moves a little further. Means that our plunger here isn't pushing it all the way over for whatever reason. So now I'm going to have to get it out. Usually I can use a flat screwdriver or a dental pick that I have put a little wedge on, compress that spring back, and then tilt the extractor up like so, so it comes out. I'm going to pull out that plunger. All right, so we sit in the gun like so. When the extractor is spring loaded out, moves to there, plunger moves forward until the two flats match up, then the extractor won't move any further this direction. So what I need to do is angle the extractor further back on the bottom. I said extractor, I meant extractor plunger. Yeah, before I get carried away, I'm going to polish that a little bit. I'm also going to take some more material off closer to the stud. That sounds hard. Part of that is it's a little tough, but part of it is these are old dull files too. They're sharp enough to do what I need. I'm gonna have to get in your way. Crank that around. See, when I spin that stuff around, move it closer to me or further away, it makes Robert's job much more difficult. Because then he's got to focus and refocus and curses Ken. I'm going to round some area there. We're back to the bolt, seeing if everything will slide in. I'm not going to slow down and talk about what I'm doing because I already did that. You guys know where I'm at and what's going on. Getting closer, but not close enough. But now when I push that over, it's spring loaded over as far as it's wanting to go. So now I simply have to figure out what is preventing its travel inward. So I'm going to cheat a little bit, tap on that. What I'm doing is hopefully marring things up so I can see where stuff is rubbing. Mm-hmm. All right, let me clamp this. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little mark right there, and then it's kind of wanked up over here. I believe that's where it's coming into contact, maybe right in there too, with our bolt. So, move the hook away from the breech face. Break that bottom edge and that top edge. Gotta move this out a little bit. And get some halfway decent sandpaper to knock off some of the larger edges. So the shaft area, I really don't care how rounded over it is. The hook area, the part that we care about, is just right here. I don't care what it looks like down here. Right here's where it's touching the case. That's the important part. And I say that just so people don't get confused about, you know, what's critical. The part that's touching the case. That's the critical part. Oh yeah. Much better. Look how much closer we are to the cartridge case. Now I'm not saying it's on there perfect, although it stays on there now. Needs to be a little bit more. I want to take out the right extractor. I want to sharpen it up. Break that bottom edge, sharpen some things up. But I'm probably going to make this one come in a little bit more. But you can see how much closer it is already. Awesome. So the top of the plunger right here has like a little bevel on it. That's so I can wedge something down between it and the extractor and pull it back. On the right-hand side, if you can't get anything down in there, you end up scratching the top of the plunger. It slips off, you scratch here, you cut your thumb. It's a nightmare. So when I take this plunger out, I'm probably going to put a little 45-degree angle on that to match this, because now, using a little flat dental pick, I can stick that in there, pull the plunger back, rotate the extractor out, and then the plunger comes out. All right, so this is the left extractor. I'm not done working on it yet, but we're getting so much closer. Just rounding that up a little bit where it rides inside that rounded hole. Now I want to break what is the bottom edge, because the shell slides up the breech face underneath that. So I want to break that bottom edge so the shell will hit that, cam it out of the way. I'm going to shoe shine that just a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to polish the front because it needs to be polished, nice and smooth. Now, if I had to, or if it runs into problems, I can go and hit this on a buffer to break that edge. It's already broken, but to polish it up a little bit. I don't think I'm even going to need to. That bevel on the extractor plunger works well. So now I'm going to put the spring in, the plunger back in, and the extractor. So now they go where they're supposed to be. The right extractor is a little a little heavier, and it should be all well and good. Now I'm going to leave that in there, the left-hand extractor, and work on this right one. So we don't really want to have to set up the camera again if we don't have to, but I may have to go to the bench to get this one out. I'm going to. There we go. All right, so I'm going to show you. So here's the shelf that retains the extractor. It sits like so. The top, you can see it's got a big scratch there. I did that scratch. I'm going to put this in the lathe and polish it up. And I'm going to either put a 45-degree chamfer on the top here, or I might do both. You can put a chamfer right here, just some place to where your sharp tool can get between the extractor and the plunger, then pull the plunger away so the extractor comes out of the bolt. Now on some guns, I don't want to mention any, but some really high quality guns, let's say Sako bolt action rifles, will have a groove cut right here to where you can use a scribe to stick it in there and pull that plunger back, pull that out. But I won't tell you it was early Sakos. All right. So since we're talking about that, and you can do that too. Take a cutoff disc, cut a groove in the middle. Yeah, that works. But this is quicker and easier. Now, remember how I rounded the underside of our left extractor so it would fit further in? Notice how our right extractor is flat and square as well. Same thing, same principle applies. And this one I'm going to do over here so you can see it a little different view. And just by breaking those edges, we'll allow that extractor to move closer into the bolt face. Let me look at that hook. So I don't believe we're positive enough. Now I'm going to go back to this other side because I'm right-handed. I can see it better in this direction. And I don't believe it's positive enough. So I'm taking a 3/4 file. I'm going to go lay it flat on flat. I'm going to run it up next to the hook, tilt it up just a little, and then undercut that extractor to give it a positive, sharp hook. Because we want our extractor to dig into the cartridge and again, 22 rim fire, so straight blowback. The case is extracting itself, we hope. But once it starts moving back, we want that extractor to really dig in and hold on. So when the ejector hits it, it can be pivoted off the right extractor. Shoe shine. One last thing, I'm going to, again, it's easier for me to see if I tilt this up like so. Break that bottom edge. Make sure we're positive that direction. Broke the bottom edge so the shell's feeding up. We'll hit it and cam it out of the way. Hit that extractor face. Sharpen it up. Polish it up. And now I'm going to go polish this up. You guys don't need to see that. I'm just going to clean that up, that scratch mark. I'll come right back and we'll put it together. All right, so we polished those plungers, made those final adjustments on the extractors, got them in the gun. Everything worked or works. So I put a couple drops of oil on there just to make sure everything's good and does what it's supposed to. The shell goes onto the breech face with tension. We don't fall off. So extractors are now correct. So the next thing we're going to do is, I mentioned that during feeding, extraction, ejection, almost always you need to polish the chamber. So I don't know that we need to, but I'm going to for several reasons. One, I always like to do it. Two, you guys might as well see us do it. And That just makes things that much better. So, and this one's kind of unique. So I'm going to lightly clamp this in here. You got stamped sheet metal, so I'm not reefing on it with 200 pounds of torque. You know, I'm just something to hold it in place. All right, so a couple things you need to be aware of before we get started. One, on the Savage 87, they got a feature that's really cool. This is one of the things I really like. Right here in the top, this is the top, here's your rear sight. This is the top of the receiver. This is what they call the bumper, and they call that the bumper. It's a spring-loaded piece of steel here. So if the shell high feeds, it hits here. As it's pushed forward, it goes right into the chamber. When the bolt closes, let me drag that bolt over here. The bumper hits here. There's an inclined plane, and it's simply the bolt forces it up out of the way. That's why it's spring-loaded. So this is an early one. It's a one-piece steel that fits into a groove in the barrel. Underneath it, you can't see it, but there's a little teeny coil spring that spring loads it. The later ones are stamped sheet metal, one piece, and they're their own spring. So they fit inside here, they come back, they come down and then bend back, and they are their own spring. They do break, be aware. To take them, to replace them, which we're not getting into in this, you knock out the two pins that retain the barrel in the receiver, pull the barrel out, the old bumper comes out, and the new one goes right in. So it's not that difficult. Fabricating the solid steel one isn't that difficult either. So if you get one that's broken, keep the broken pieces because it gives you kind of the pattern. All right, getting on to the serious stuff, what we're really here for. The reason I mentioned the bumper is that our polishing mandrel is going to fit down through the receiver and into the chamber. Our bumper spring-loaded down to the edge of the chamber. So I'm going to go in with my dental pick and pull it out of the way, guide my mandrel wrapped in sandpaper into place. I want to pull that bumper out of the way and run that in and out, in and out, in and out, polishing that chamber. The dental pick holds the bumper out of the way, mandrel spins, sandpaper inside. Now I don't want to get too carried away because I'm not going to pull this gun all the way apart, and so I don't want a ton of grit and crap all over in this. So I'm going to blow that out. I will take a toothbrush and any place that there is lots of grit and stuff, and if grit and stuff is causing problems, obviously I will take it apart, but I don't want to if I don't have to. Once I have that all cleaned, I can examine the chamber. It looks nice and polished. I'm going to take a cartridge and put it into the chamber. Okay, so the shell fell into the chamber almost all the way. I'm going to reach in and pull the bumper out of the way, and the cartridge slides all the way into the chamber. So we know that our chamber is nice and smooth and open enough for the shell to slide all the way in. I'm going to take a Q-tip, an old dirty Q-tip, run it down into the barrel just to clean out any excess stuff. A little bit of grit looks like in that left extractor groove. A little bit here. So we're ready to put it back together and see how things work. Okay, we're ready to put the gun back together. So take our bolt, slide it in from the rear, and if you pull the trigger, it manipulates the two plungers and allows this to slide in a little easier. Once you get it in so far, you can use something long like a screwdriver or a dowel or a pencil or whatever, just pushing this up in the rest of the way. And by the rest of the way, I just mean to where our cocking handle or charging handle can be inserted. Notch up. Because our firing pin and hammer fit together like so. The firing pin fits inside like so, fits into the bolt and retains, come on now, that firing pin. Excuse me. The firing pin retains the bolt handle. Sorry, I'm thinking and I'm trying to do things at once. I can't do two things at once. There we go. I didn't have the bolt handle in far enough. All right. So at this point, I push it forward, pull the trigger. It fires. That lowers the hammer and the firing pin, right? But it also lowers the spring, which means I can start this at leisure without any compression, screw it all the way down, and we're ready to go. Now, there's two ways to go at this point, using dummies or live rounds. Load a couple. I'm only going to load about 3 in the magazine tube and check it with the stock off. We got to be very careful if we're using live rounds that we don't have an accident. I often use live rounds. If you don't, so be it. It's a personal preference. I don't want hate mail. Don't call and tell me it's terrible. We use live rounds from time to time. So 3 live rounds. Open the magazine if we can. 1, 2, 3. And now we know there's only 3. Rotate that into place. All right, so pointed up, got a live round right here on top of the carrier. Pull the bolt handle back. The carrier rose, lifted the shell into the feed position. The bolt's going to go forward, close. Carrier's being pushed down. Second shell comes on top of the carrier. That round is ejected. All well and good. Now, when we first started this, you notice that I cycled the gun a couple times and pulled the trigger and checked things. That's making sure it doesn't follow down. You don't want to put a bunch of live rounds in there and then pow, it goes off, right? So it's not like we jumped into this without knowing what's going on, okay? All right, so it seems to want to feed. I'm going to bolt this gun back together. It goes to the range now, and we test fire, and away we go. This is one of those where you get to see the mechanical part, which is over the shoulder. We'll see you next time.
If you want to learn real gunsmithing and see more videos like this, be sure and like and subscribe so you don't miss out. If you're interested in training to be a real gunsmith, go check out the AmericanGunsmithinginstitute.com, or for your own firearms training, AmericanGunsmith.com.